Welcome back, second graders. I am so excited to be reading a chapter book with you. In our last video, I read the first two chapters of Dragons in a Bag by Zetta Elliott to you. Today I'm going to continue to read the next couple of chapters to you, but before I begin, I'd like to start by rereading the last page of chapter 2, just so you can remember what has happened so far. Remember, Jax is with someone who he thought was his grandmother, but at the end of chapter 2, she tells him he's not actually her grandson, and she tells him what to call her. Boy, I ain't your granny. Now it's my turn to look shocked. You're not? I stammer. Did Mama run off and leave me with a complete stranger? Well, what should I call you then? I ask. She grunts and pushes in her chair. What everyone else calls me, Ma. Then the woman who is not my grandmother shuffles out of the kitchen, leaving me alone with the mysterious box. Chapter 3. I sit myself in the kitchen with my eyes glued to the box and my mouth glued shut by peanut butter. I try not to blink, but nothing happens for so long that I cave. Did I imagine the whole thing? Maybe there's nothing special inside that box after all. Then I hear a scratching sound at the window, which is open just a crack. At first I think the breeze is making the crisp, yellowed paper blind scrape against the window frame. But when the sound keeps up, I realize there's something moving out on the fire escape. I take another swig of root beer to unglue my mouth, just in case I have to cry for help. Then I stand up and take a deep breath. I go over to the window and carefully lift one corner of the drawn blind. The sight of a furry gray squirrel makes me sigh with relief. Squirrels are harmless, but this particular one seems determined to open the window. She reaches her paws under the edge and her sharp claws scratch against the metal frame. Want to come in? I ask, even though I know she can't understand me. But to my surprise, the squirrel stops reaching under the window and nods at me. I glance over my shoulder to make sure Ma's not around. She must have been one of those really old rotary phones because I can hear her dialing it in the living room. I tug at the blind so it rolls up a bit. The squirrel clasps her paws together and eagerly hops from one foot to another. If I ever let a rodent into our kitchen, Mama would pitch a fit. I think they're kind of cute, but Mama says squirrels are just rats with bushy tails. I bet Ma would pitch a fit too, but something about this squirrel makes me think it's a risk worth taking. I lift the window so the squirrel has enough room to crawl inside. The first thing she does is hop onto the counter where Ma left the stamp-covered box. The squirrel grabs the box like she's going to lift the package up. Then she turns her head and rests it on top of the box. She closes her bright black eyes, and I realize she's listening to whatever's inside. For several seconds, the kitchen is silent. Ma's voice in the other room, it sounds like she's arguing with someone. Finally, the squirrel lets go of the box and bursts into a fast-flowing stream of screeches and chirps. I can't understand what she's saying, of course, which seems to frustrate the squirrel. She hops from the counter to the table and grabs what's left of my peanut butter sandwich. Are you hungry? I ask. Go on, take it. I don't want any more. I expect the squirrel to start nibbling on the half-eaten sandwich, but instead she hops back onto the counter and sets the sandwich on top of the box. We both wait to see what will happen. A low rumbling sound comes from within, and then the box suddenly jumps and the sandwich goes flying onto the kitchen floor. There's a picture that goes with this part. I bend down to pick it up, and that's when I feel the squirrel's 4 feet on my back. When I stand up, I see that she has hopped from the counter to the top of the fridge. The determined squirrel is pushing aside Ma's bread box to reach the cupboard it's blocking. "What's up there?" I ask. The squirrel answers in her own language and keeps tugging at the knob of the cupboard door. It seems to be stuck or locked, and the squirrel tries harder to open the cupboard, and her feet push against the metal bread box closer and closer to the edge of the fridge. I reach up my hand to stop it from crashing to the floor before anxiously glancing over my shoulder. "You better quiet down or Ma will hear you," I warn the squirrel. She stops chattering and puts her front paws on her hips as she studies the closed door. Maybe the cupboard's really locked. I put my hands on my hips too and think for a moment. What could be so important that Ma would keep it locked away in the kitchen cupboard? And what's the connection between whatever's hidden in the cupboard and whatever is inside the box from Madagascar? The squirrel tries to fit her claws under the edge of the door, but the cupboard still won't open. She screeches and jumps up and down in exasperation. "Hold on, I'll help you," I say. I lift up a chair to make as little noise as possible as I move it from the table over to the fridge. I put one foot on the seat of the chair and my second foot leaves the floor just as Ma comes into the kitchen. "What on earth?" Ma's eyes dart from me to the squirrel over to the box. I hop down from the chair and brace myself for a whole lot of hollering, but instead, Ma quietly asks, "Where are the marshmallows?" "Marshmallows?" I ask. "Is that what Ma keeps locked away in the cupboard?" "You didn't give them any, did you, boy?" she asks with a panicked look on her face. "No, ma'am." She glares at me, so I quickly say, "No, Ma." Then I wonder just who she meant when she said them. Whatever inside the box, there's more than one. The squirrel pounds her tiny fists on the cupboard door and screeches at Ma. "Who asked you?" Ma cries. "You nosy little troublemaker, get out of my kitchen." When the squirrel doesn't obey, Ma grabs a wooden cane that's leaning against the wall. For a moment, I think she's going to wallop me, but instead Ma raises the cane and aims for the squirrel. She jumps out of the way just in time, and Ma's cane crushes the metal bread box instead. It clatters to the floor, and the squirrel lands on my head before hopping back onto the counter. She stands on her hind legs and chatters angrily at Ma. "Don't you tell me how to handle my business. I may be old, but I ain't daft. Now get." Ma swings the cane again, and this time it comes down hard on the cardboard box. The squirrel and I gasp at the same time. Ma doesn't seem to care that there are things that are alive in that box. She raises her cane over her head once more, but this time the squirrel surrenders. She backs away from the badly dented box, her paws held up in surrender. Then, to my surprise, the squirrel looks straight at me. She points at the locked cupboard above the fridge before squeezing out the open window and disappearing down the fire escape. Chapter 4. Ma slams the window shut before snatching the mashed up box off the counter. She tucks it under her arm and spins round to face me. "I thought I told you to read a book." I open my mouth to reply, but then realize Ma doesn't expect me to say a word. My cheeks tingle with shame as I stoop to pick up the dented bread box. I set it on the table and then shove my hands into my pockets to keep them from finding any more trouble. I open my mouth to tell Ma that I'm usually a very obedient boy, but no words come out. I almost never break the rules at home, but things feel different here. I feel different here. I want to ask Ma a dozen questions, but the stern look on the strange old lady's face tells me I better keep my questions to myself for now. Ma prods me in the back with her cane, so I walk out of the kitchen ahead of her and into the dark hallway. In the dining room, I see the old-fashioned phone in the center of the round table and notice there's no cord attaching it to the wall. "Did you make your phone call?" I ask. Ma dumps the damaged box on the table and swats me on the butt with her cane. "Go find a book, boy," she says with a nod in the direction of the living room. This time I do as I'm told. I figure maybe if I don't break any more rules, Ma will tell me what's inside the box from Madagascar. I didn't notice when I first got here, but one entire wall of the living room is covered with bookshelves. Problem is, I can't read the titles. Can I open the curtains? I ask, but Ma's busy rifling through her purse and doesn't respond. I'm relieved when the mysterious box jumps a couple of times. Whatever creatures are inside are still alive. But then Ma mashes the box with her fist and they whimper before growing silent and still once more. I'm so busy staring at the mangled box that I don't realize Ma's watching me. I jump when she says, "You found a book yet?" I turn my head so that I'm facing the wall of books. No, Ma. You need me to come over there and pick one for you? I quickly shake my head and peer at the spines of the books crammed onto the shelf. Ma starts digging in her purse again, and I hear a few curse words come out of her mouth. I can't tell exactly what she's muttering, but I do hear one name over and over again, Elroy. I wonder how Elroy would feel if he knew how Ma was treating the gift he sent. The books on the shelf all look old and smell kind of musty. There's no dust on the shelves, but I get the feeling that these books haven't been read in a mighty long time. The words on the spines are printed in faded gold ink that I can barely read. I tug open one of the heavy blue curtains so that a bit of light slips into the dark room. One thick green book immediately catches my eye, The Wondrous Lizards of Madagascar by L. Roy Jenkins. Could Ma's friend Elroy be the same Elroy Jenkins? Just as I pull the heavy book off the shelf, Ma calls out, "Come here, boy." I check to see whether Ma's holding her cane before I take a few steps toward the dining room. Ma's actually smiling, and her cane is safely hooked over the back of one of the chairs that circle the table. It looks like she has dumped everything that used to be inside her purse onto the table. But the biggest surprise is that the stamp-covered box is open. The 4 cardboard flaps have been pushed back to reveal a tangle of shredded paper strips. Whatever's inside that box was packed with care. Hopefully that means that the creatures are safe. When Ma sees me eyeing the box, she moves her empty old lady purse in front of it to block my view. Then she brightens her smile and asks, "Want a mint?" After that terrible peanut butter sandwich, I could actually use a breath mint, but I only nod so that I have an excuse to go back into the dining room and get a closer look at the box. I clutch the book to my chest with one hand while holding the other out for a mint. Ma pulls a small red tin from the mess on the table. She shakes it, flips the lid open, and then dumps all the mints into my outstretched hand. I only want one," I tell her. Put the rest in your pocket," Ma says. "I need this tin." Then she blows the minty white dust out of the empty tin and tells me to turn around. I will keep reading the rest of chapter 5 to you on our next video. I hope you've been enjoying Dragons in a Bag as much as I have. Goodbye for now.